The night was heavy with silence when Daniel Miller sat in his dim apartment, the glow of a desk lamp casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. His phone buzzed, and when he answered, a trembling voice whispered, "They know where you are," before the line cut to static. Daniel's heart pounded as he whispered, "Who's there?" But only silence replied. Seconds later, a scream echoed from the alley outside, sharp and piercing, slicing through the midnight air. He rushed to the window, searching the street below, but it was empty except for a small object lying in the gutter. He muttered, "This can't be real," before racing down the creaky stairs. When he reached the street, the cold wind whipped through his jacket, and his breath fogged in the air. The object was impossibly out of place, a wooden pendant etched with strange symbols he could not read. The forest seemed to whisper in the distance, though no trees were near. Daniel stood frozen in the middle of the street, clutching the pendant, as if it might explain the impossible. The whisper replayed in his mind like a warning carved into his skull. "They know where you are." He shivered, whispering, "What does this mean?" He turned toward the faint outline of the forest beyond the rooftops, the sound of rustling leaves echoing faintly, though the trees were miles away. His chest tightened with dread. A voice inside him said to walk away, yet curiosity rooted him. He glanced back at his building, lights dim and safe, but something darker pulled him forward. His pulse raced and the pendant grew warm in his palm. The night was no longer silent as faint whispers drifted across the street, though no one was there. He muttered, "I'm losing my mind," yet his steps carried him slowly toward the edge of town. Daniel walked with cautious steps, sneakers crunching on gravel as he moved toward the woods. The pendant throbbed faintly like a living thing in his palm, each beat echoing his racing heart. He whispered, "Why me?" But the night offered no answer. The deeper he went, the stronger the whispers became, drifting like invisible threads tugging at his mind. They carried no words, only sounds that brushed against his thoughts. He stopped beneath a flickering streetlight on the edge of town. Carved into the wooden pole were the same symbols etched into the pendant. His breath caught as his hand traced the grooves, trembling as if the wood was alive. He muttered, "Someone's watching." Shadows stretched unnaturally long behind him, though the road was empty. Fear clawed at him, yet his feet refused to move. Daniel stumbled back from the carved pole, heart hammering in his chest. "I'll do." The whispers grew louder, swirling in the wind like countless unseen voices. He muttered, "Stop, please stop," clutching his head to silence them. His eyes darted toward dark houses nearby, their windows empty and lifeless. No movement stirred, no light flickered, only silence filled the night. Fear burned through him, yet curiosity chained him to the spot. He whispered, "If this is a dream, I need to wake up." The pendant pulsed brighter, casting a ghostly glow across his shaking hands. The night pressed closer, shadows bending unnaturally. Suddenly, at the edge of the forest, a faint figure moved between the trees. His breath froze as the whispers hushed in unison. Daniel's breath trembled as he stared at the shifting darkness. The figure at the tree line stopped, half hidden by mist, as if waiting. Daniel whispered, "Who are you?" But his words vanished in the silence. The figure did not move, yet the pendant flared brighter, forcing him to squint. He raised it, casting pale light that revealed fragments, the hem of a long coat, and the outline of a face too still. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized the figure knew about the pendant. Fear fought against the need for answers as he took one step forward. The figure stirred at last, lifting a hand in a gesture, both warning and invitation. Daniel whispered, "What do you want?" But the forest answered only with silence, holding its breath. Daniel tightened his grip on the pendant as he crossed the last street of town and stepped onto the gravel path leading toward the woods. The trees loomed in the distance, their silhouettes sharp against the pale moon. He muttered, "This is madness." But his feet carried him forward. The air grew colder, as if the forest exhaled frost. A faint rustling echoed between the branches, though no wind stirred. Daniel paused, heart pounding, every nerve alert. He looked back toward the town, the lights shrinking into a blur, safe but unreachable now. The whispers pressed into his ears, soft but insistent, pulling him toward the darkness. He whispered, "Just one step more," and entered the shadows beneath the towering trees. The world shifted with the sound of the pendant's faint pulse. Inside the forest, the silence deepened, broken only by faint whispers threading through the branches. Daniel lifted the pendant, its glow casting a pale circle across the undergrowth. He muttered, "I shouldn't be here," but curiosity outweighed fear. The trees were ancient and massive, their bark rough with time, their roots tangled like veins across the soil. Daniel thought he saw movement in the corner of his eye, a shadow darting between trunks, but when he turned there was nothing. His breath quickened, and the sound seemed too loud in the silence. The whispers grew clearer, almost forming words, but slipping away before he could grasp them. He said, "Show yourself," though his voice cracked. Only the rustle of leaves answered. Daniel's steps quickened as he pushed deeper into the woods, branches brushing his shoulders. He froze when he caught a glimpse of movement, a dark figure slipping between trees. His pulse thundered. He whispered, "I saw you." But only silence followed. He pressed forward, eyes scanning every shadow. The forest floor crackled beneath his shoes, each sound amplified. A sudden rustle erupted behind him and he spun, but nothing was there. His breathing grew ragged. The pendant throbbed in his hand, guiding him forward as if aware of the hidden presence. He whispered, "Are you following me?" The darkness seemed to shift, swallowing his words. Daniel stumbled as a voice broke the silence, soft yet urgent. From the shadows an older man emerged holding a lantern. The man looked worn, his eyes darting nervously. He whispered, "Turn back before it's too late." Daniel stepped closer, asking, "Who are you?" The man shook his head, muttering, "You don't understand. They'll hear you." His voice cracked with fear. Daniel felt the pendant heat in his hand, its glow brighter in the man's presence. Daniel said, "What do you mean they?" The man glanced toward the trees, face pale, and whispered, "The ones who whisper. The ones who wait." His lantern flickered, as if struggling against the dark. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he studied the frightened stranger. "Who are they?" he asked. Thomas shook his head, voice low. "You shouldn't have followed the whispers. They belong to something older than this forest." Daniel stepped closer, insisting, "Tell me what you know." Thomas flinched, torn between warning and silence. The pendant flared brighter and Thomas gasped, whispering, "You have their mark." Daniel frowned, anger mixing with fear. "What are you talking about?" Thomas raised his lantern toward the trees. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and a low hum rippled through the night. "They know you now," Thomas whispered, his voice breaking. "And they will not stop." Daniel followed Thomas deeper into the forest, the lantern flickering as the pendant's glow pulsed against the dark. Thomas muttered, "You're in danger," his voice trembling with fear. Daniel pressed him, "Tell me the truth." Thomas sighed, shoulders heavy with guilt. "I tried to stay silent, but you've walked too far to turn back." Daniel's heart raced as he demanded, "What do you know?" Thomas stopped beside a moss-covered boulder, his eyes clouded. "The whispers belong to them, the ones who rule this forest. I once served them." Daniel stiffened at the words, realizing Thomas was not a savior, but a man chained to secrets. The silence pressed heavier, carrying betrayal in the shadows. Daniel's voice sharpened as he asked, "If you serve them, why warn me?" Thomas shook his head, lantern light trembling across his worn features. "Because I know what they do to those who disobey." Daniel's stomach twisted as his eyes darted across the forest, searching for movement. From the path behind, footsteps crunched. A figure appeared in uniform, badge glinting faintly. Sheriff Walter Hayes stepped into the clearing, his jaw tight. "You shouldn't be here, Daniel." Daniel's chest tightened. "You knew about this." Walter's silence answered louder than words. The authority he trusted was fractured, hiding secrets behind tired eyes. Walter's gaze locked on Daniel, his voice heavy. "You don't understand what's waiting here." Daniel snapped. "Then explain it." Thomas muttered. "He won't, he's tied to them too." Walter's eyes narrowed, anger flashing before softening with guilt. "I tried to protect this town, but their reach is endless." Daniel felt betrayal gnaw at him as the whispers grew louder, winding through the trees. From the shadows, a ragged figure emerged, hair wild, eyes blazing with strange intensity. A woman's voice rang out. "You hear them too, don't you?" Daniel turned, startled, as the eccentric stranger smiled with unsettling clarity. Eliza stepped closer, her voice sharp with urgency. "The whispers are not madness. They are a call." Daniel asked. "A call to what?" She grinned faintly. "To serve, or to be consumed." Walter hissed. "Ignore her. She's dangerous." Eliza laughed bitterly. "Says the sheriff who bends his knee to them." Daniel's mind spun, trust collapsing. Thomas lowered his lantern, whispering, "We're all trapped here." The whispers surged louder, weaving paranoia through Daniel's veins. His breathing grew ragged as betrayal closed in on all sides. The faces before him blurred between ally and enemy, truth and deception. A sudden chill swept the grove, silencing them. Daniel's eyes widened as he stumbled over something on the ground. His hands shook as he brushed away leaves, revealing a pale hand cold against the earth. Thomas whispered, "No." The whispers grew sharp, carrying pain. Daniel uncovered the lifeless body of a young woman, her face frozen in terror, strange symbols carved into her skin. Walter stepped back, whispering, "Another victim." Eliza's eyes burned with rage. "This is what they do." Daniel's chest heaved, fury mixing with fear. The tragedy confirmed the truth. Something monstrous ruled the forest. Daniel staggered back from Emily's body, bile rising in his throat. His eyes scanned the trees where faint carvings glowed on the bark. The same symbols as the pendant spread across multiple trunks like veins of fire. He whispered, "They're everywhere." Thomas's lantern trembled in his hand as he muttered, "The forest itself belongs to them." Walter growled, "We should leave now," though his voice wavered with doubt. Eliza stepped closer to the glowing runes, her eyes widening with grim satisfaction. "This is proof. You can't deny it any longer." Daniel touched one of the carvings, his fingers stinging as if burned. The whispers grew deafening, carrying voices not his own, echoing from every tree. The group pressed deeper into the woods, drawn by a low chant echoing through the mist. Daniel's heart hammered, each step heavier than the last. He muttered, "What is that sound?" Eliza answered softly, "The call of the ritual." Thomas's face went pale, whispering, "We should turn back." Walter gritted his teeth, saying, "It's too late for that." The chanting grew louder, rhythmic and unearthly, resonating through the soil. Daniel's pendant pulsed in time with the chant, pulling him forward. Branches arched overhead, twisting unnaturally into a tunnel. His breath quickened, each inhale tasting of damp earth and ash. The voices merged into a single phrase he could almost understand. The path opened into a hidden clearing lit by fires burning in iron braziers. Figures cloaked in black stood in a circle, their faces hidden behind carved wooden masks. Daniel froze, whispering, "A cult." Eliza smirked, "Now you see them." The chants grew louder as the masked figures raised their arms in unison. Thomas muttered, "We shouldn't have come." Walter's hand hovered near his weapon, his face tight with fear. The pendant in Daniel's palm glowed brighter, and several masked heads turned toward him. He felt their attention like knives pressing into his chest. His breath caught as one figure stepped forward, mask carved with the same runes from the trees. Daniel's chest heaved as he watched the cultist kneel before a towering figure cloaked in black. The leader's mask bore deeper carvings glowing faintly in the firelight. A guttural chant poured from him, commanding the circle. Daniel whispered, "What are they doing?" Eliza's eyes gleamed as she said, witnessing the rite. Thomas shook his head, stepping back. "We need to leave now." Walter growled, "Quiet. They'll hear us. The leader raised a staff carved with runes, slamming it into the ground. The earth trembled, and the whispers became a roar. Daniel felt the pendant heat so intensely he nearly dropped it. The leader turned, staring directly at him as the firelight flared. The air thickened as the cult leader stepped closer, voice carrying like thunder. "The chosen has come," he declared. Daniel's blood ran cold as masked figures turned toward him, their chanting shifting to his name. He whispered, "This isn't real," but the pendant pulsed like a heartbeat. Eliza stepped closer to Daniel, her voice low. "You were always part of this." Thomas gasped, "No, he's just a man." Walter shouted, "Stay back!" His hand gripped his weapon, but hesitation froze him. Daniel's body trembled, caught between fear and fury. The leader's mask tilted slightly, as though smiling. The whispers filled the clearing, wrapping Daniel in suffocating sound. The cult leader's voice thundered across the clearing as he lowered his staff. "The bloodline returns," he declared, his words cutting through the chant. Daniel staggered back, shouting, "What are you talking about?" Eliza's lips curled into a knowing smile. "You carry their mark, Daniel. It was never chance you came here." His pulse raced as the pendant burned hot against his skin. Thomas cried out, "No, he's not one of them." But the cult leader turned his mask toward Thomas with cold disdain. Walter stepped forward, barking, "Enough games," yet hesitation froze him. Daniel's world tilted as betrayal swirled around him. Daniel gasped as the pendant flared, burning his palm until he dropped it. It hit the earth with a thud, glowing brighter. Eliza whispered, "It recognizes you." Walter drew his gun, aiming at the cult leader. "You're not taking him." The cultists hissed in unison, their chant shifting into a dark harmony. Thomas stumbled forward, grabbing Daniel's arm. "You can still escape?" Daniel shook his head, voice breaking. "They know me now. There's no escape." The forest pulsed with the rhythm of the chants, every tree groaning as if alive. The air grew heavy with ash and dread. A sudden crack split the night as Walter fired his gun. The bullet struck the cult leader's mask, splintering wood, but the leader did not fall. Instead he laughed, the sound low and inhuman. Daniel whispered, "That's not possible." Thomas pulled him back, panic flooding his eyes. "You can't fight them." Walter reloaded quickly, hands shaking. Eliza's voice cut through the chaos. "Violence won't save you, Sheriff. It only feeds them." Daniel's stomach churned as the cultists closed in, their steps synchronized, their masks glowing faintly. The pendant's pulse matched his heartbeat, binding him tighter to the ritual. Daniel clutched his chest as the whispers roared inside his skull. The cult leader raised his staff high, chanting in a tongue that chilled Daniel's blood. Flames leapt higher, twisting unnaturally. Daniel shouted, "Stop!" But the voice that escaped his lips was not his own. It echoed with another presence. The cultists fell silent for a heartbeat, bowing their heads. Eliza's eyes widened with triumph. "You spoke with them." Walter shouted, "Daniel, fight it!" Thomas whispered, "It's already inside him." Daniel collapsed to his knees, trembling, torn between resisting and surrendering to the power flowing through him. The chanting surged again as the cultists pressed closer, their voices circling Daniel like a storm. The leader's staff struck the earth, sending a shockwave that knocked Thomas to the ground. Walter fired again, but the bullet vanished into the air. Daniel screamed, his voice layered with whispers, as the pendant lifted from the dirt and floated before him. Eliza's voice trembled with excitement. "The forest has chosen." Thomas crawled forward begging, "Daniel, resist them." Walter grabbed his arm, pulling him back. The clearing spun in chaos, yet Daniel could only stare at the pendant glowing like a beating heart. Daniel rose slowly, his breath ragged, the floating pendant casting fiery light across his face. The cult leader lowered his staff and said, "Your blood binds you to us." Daniel shook his head, shouting, "I'm nothing like you." The cultists hissed, their voices merging into a single low drone. Walter stepped forward, gun raised, but the leader's gaze froze him in place. Thomas whispered urgently, "Daniel, fight back." Eliza's voice trembled with awe as she declared, "He was chosen long before tonight." Daniel's fists clenched, the heat of the pendant burning through his veins. For the first time, he felt strength rising from within, pulling against the whispers. The ground shook as the cult leader struck his staff into the soil, splitting the earth with a violent crack. Dark mist poured upward, swirling around the clearing like smoke alive. Daniel staggered, gripping the pendant as if it anchored him. He shouted, "Why me?" The leader's voice rumbled, "Because your family gave you to us generations ago." Thomas gasped, horror etched across his face. Walter cursed under his breath, muttering, "God help us." Eliza smiled faintly, saying, "This is destiny." Daniel's chest tightened as the truth crushed him. He whispered, "I never chose this," his voice raw with pain, yet his hands glowed with the pendant's power. The cultists surged forward, their masks glowing as they closed in. Walter fired his pistol, dropping one, but another leapt at him, knocking him to the ground. Thomas swung his lantern wildly, flames scattering sparks. Daniel shouted, "Stay back!" His voice boomed unnaturally, and the pendant flared, blasting two cultists backward. Eliza laughed in disbelief, shouting, "He's awakening!" The leader's mask tilted upward, unshaken. "Power without obedience is meaningless," he said coldly. Daniel gritted his teeth, fighting the pull of whispers in his mind. For the first time, the forest seemed to push back against its master. Walter cried out as a masked cultist slashed at him, the blow glancing across his arm. Blood stained his sleeve as he shoved the attacker off. Thomas lunged forward, swinging his lantern into another's mask, shattering it. For a moment, Daniel glimpsed the pale, terrified face of a man beneath. Then the leader raised his staff and thunder rolled overhead. Eliza screamed, "It's too strong!" Daniel shouted back, "Then we make it weaker." He hurled the pendant's light outward, striking the leader's staff. The blast shook the clearing, fire dimming for an instant. But Thomas collapsed nearby, lantern broken, his body writhing from the shockwave. Daniel knelt beside Thomas, shaking him. "Stay with me," Thomas whispered. "Use it. End them." His eyes dimmed, the life fading as his hand slipped from Daniel's grasp. Fury surged through Daniel as he rose, the pendant's glow blazing brighter than ever. Walter shouted, "Daniel, no." But Daniel stepped forward, his voice echoing with the whispers yet now under his control. "I am not yours," he told the leader. The cultists faltered, their chant breaking. Eliza's eyes filled with awe and fear. The leader raised his staff to strike again, but Daniel raised his hand, the pendant's light expanding into a storm. The storm of light consumed the clearing, scattering the cultists like leaves in a gale. Their masks shattered, revealing pale faces twisted in fear before they vanished into the mist. Daniel collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, the pendant dimming in his hand. The forest grew eerily silent, the whispers gone as if retreating into the trees. Walter staggered forward, bleeding but alive, muttering, "It's over." Eliza stared at Daniel, her voice trembling. "No, it's only begun." Daniel's eyes met hers, fire still flickering in their depths. For the first time, the forest felt alive in a way that chilled his soul. Walter dropped to one knee, pressing a hand to his wound, his voice strained. "You destroyed them, Daniel." Daniel shook his head slowly, whispering, "No, I only scattered them." Eliza's laugh rang hollow, echoing through the silent grove. "The forest doesn't lose, it waits." Daniel's skin prickled as the trees creaked, their branches shifting as if listening. He muttered, "Then it's never over." Walter looked at him with grim respect, saying, "You're stronger than them now." Daniel clenched the pendant, though it felt heavier than ever. The silence grew oppressive, promising that unseen eyes still watched. From the shadows of the grove, a faint figure emerged. The mysterious stranger who had lingered at the tree line earlier now stepped into view, cloaked and silent. Daniel rose, glaring. "You were watching all along." The stranger's voice was low and calm. "The forest never reveals its hand too soon." Walter barked. "Who are you?" The stranger tilted their head, saying, "A witness, nothing more." Daniel stepped forward, pendant glowing faintly. "What do you want from me?" The stranger's eyes glimmered beneath the hood. "Not what I want, what it still demands." With that, the figure melted back into the mist. Daniel stumbled back toward the forest edge, each step heavy with exhaustion. Walter followed slowly, supporting himself against tree trunks, his breathing ragged. Eliza lingered behind, whispering to herself in words Daniel could not understand. The forest grew quieter with every step, yet the silence was not peace but restraint, as though the trees waited. Daniel muttered, "I survived, but I didn't win." Walter answered, "Sometimes surviving is enough." Daniel shook his head. Not when it follows you." At the edge of the woods, the faint glow of the town lights flickered, but the shadows stretched longer behind them. Daniel reached the open road beyond the forest, pausing as the pendant flickered once more. His chest tightened, hearing a faint whisper in the wind. He froze, his blood running cold as the voice breathed into his ear. "We are not done." His hand trembled as he clutched the pendant tighter, eyes scanning the dark tree line. Walter staggered up beside him, saying nothing, his eyes wide with the same fear. Behind them, Eliza smiled faintly, her silhouette fading back into the mist. Daniel whispered to himself, "The forest follows me," knowing the terror was far from over.